Picture the last time you felt truly left out. Maybe you weren't invited to something. Maybe you saw a photo posted online from a gathering you weren't part of. Maybe someone just didn't text back. It probably lasted only a few seconds before you moved on. But something happened in your body in those few seconds that your brain treated as a genuine emergency. And the reason why reaches back millions of years before social media, before smartphones, before cities, before language itself. Your ancestors did not survive alone. That is the single most important fact about your biology that almost no one talks about. For the vast majority of human history, being separated from your group was not a social inconvenience, it was a death sentence. A lone human on the open savanna was a slow, weak, clawless creature with no fangs, no shell, and no hope. The moment you lost your group, the clock started. Predators, starvation, exposure. A human alone was a human about to die. Your brain never forgot that. It encoded the threat of social exclusion at the deepest possible level. Not as a preference, not as a feeling, as a survival alarm. And that alarm still fires today, in your living room, when someone leaves you on red. Researcher Naomi Eisenberger at the University of California, Los Angeles wanted to know exactly what loneliness does inside the brain, so she put people inside a brain scanner and had them play a simple video game. The game involved passing a ball between players. Then, without warning, the other players stopped passing to the participant. They were left out of the game, completely excluded, and what Eisenberger saw in the brain scans stopped her cold. The region that lit up during social exclusion was the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex. That is the exact same region that activates when your body feels physical pain. Social rejection and a broken bone are not just metaphorically similar, they use the same neural alarm system. Your brain processes being left out the same way it processes being punched. That is not a figure of speech. That is neuroscience. And it gets stranger. Researcher C. Nathan DeWall at the University of Kentucky conducted a series of studies in which he gave participants either acetaminophen, which is a common painkiller, or a placebo every day for 3 weeks. At the end of the study, the people taking the painkiller reported significantly less social pain in their daily lives. Hurt feelings, rejection, the sting of being excluded, all of it was measurably reduced by a drug that is designed to block physical pain signals. Think about that for a moment. The over-the-counter pill you take for a headache also dulls the ache of loneliness. Because to your brain, they are the same signal coming through the same wires. This is what scientists call the social pain overlap theory. And once you understand it, you start seeing it everywhere. Why does a breakup feel like something physical? Why does grief sit in your chest? Why does humiliation make your stomach drop? These are not poetic descriptions. These are real physiological responses driven by a brain that has never learned to distinguish between a wound on your body and a wound in your social world. But why did this system evolve in the first place? Why did evolution wire pain and rejection into the same circuit? Because pain is the brain's most powerful motivator. Pain makes you stop touching fire. Pain makes you pull your hand back from a blade. Pain teaches you to avoid danger with maximum urgency. And your ancestors needed something equally urgent to keep them attached to the group. Something that would make isolation feel unbearable. Something that would drive them back to other people before it was too late. So, evolution borrowed the pain system. It took the most ancient, most reliable warning mechanism in the vertebrate body and repurposed it for social survival. The same alarm that says, "Do not touch," that also learned to say, "Do not be alone." And this is where it gets personal. Because that system is running inside you right now, today, in a world where you are almost certainly not at risk of being eaten by a lion if you miss a party. But your brain does not know that. Your brain has not received the memo that the savanna ended roughly 10,000 years ago. When you are excluded, even mildly, even trivially, the ancient alarm still fires. And it fires with the same intensity as it did for your ancestors, because evolution does not update on a human timescale. Researcher John Cacioppo spent decades studying what chronic loneliness does to the human body. What he found was not subtle. Loneliness, sustained loneliness, activates the body's threat response systems in a way that generates measurable physiological damage over time. It raises cortisol levels. It increases inflammation. It disrupts sleep. It accelerates cellular aging. Cacioppo found that lonely people are more likely to interpret ambiguous social cues as threatening. A friend's neutral expression reads as disapproval. A colleague's brief reply reads as dismissal. The lonely brain begins to see danger in faces that are simply neutral. This is the spiral. Loneliness activates the threat system. The threat system makes you hypervigilant to social danger. Hypervigilance distorts your perception of other people's intentions. That distortion makes genuine connection harder, which deepens the loneliness, which activates the threat system further. Cacioppo called this the loneliness loop. And it is not a character flaw. It is not weakness. It is your ancient survival system fighting as hard as it can in an environment it was never designed for. Here is the counterintuitive part. You can be surrounded by people and still trigger this system. Modern life is saturated with human contact and yet profoundly low in the kind of contact your brain actually needs. Your ancestors lived in groups of roughly 150 people. They knew those people by name, by smell, by the sound of their breathing. They shared food, danger, fire, sleep, and decades of accumulated memory with each person in that group. That is what your nervous system evolved expecting. That is the social environment your brain was calibrated for. What it is getting instead is 1,000 Instagram followers it has never touched, co-workers it sees for 8 hours and then never thinks about again, text threads that substitute for voices, screens that simulate presence without delivering it. Your brain knows the difference even when you do not. It scans for depth, not volume. It is looking for the kind of connection your ancestors had. And when it cannot find it, the alarm sounds. This is why you can feel lonely at a party. This is why you can feel lonely in a marriage. This is why loneliness has been called a public health crisis in some of the most densely populated, hyper-connected countries on Earth. The United Kingdom appointed a minister for loneliness in 2018. Japan followed in 2021. These are not abstract policy responses. They are governments acknowledging that something in the modern social environment is failing to meet a biological need that is as fundamental as hunger or thirst. Because that is exactly what loneliness is. It is a hunger. Cacioppo and his colleagues were explicit about this comparison. Hunger does not mean you are weak. It means your body is sending you a signal that something essential is missing. Loneliness is the same signal. It means your brain is detecting an absence of something it was built to require. And like hunger, the appropriate response is not to suppress the signal. It is to understand what is missing and move toward it. The problem is that the signal itself makes moving toward connection harder. The pain of loneliness activates the same defensive responses as any other threat. You pull back, you protect yourself, you misread people's intentions. You become, without meaning to, harder to connect with. The very thing the alarm is trying to protect you from, isolation, the alarm's side effects help create. But there is a way out. And it starts not with adding more contact to your life, but with adding more depth. Research consistently shows that what reduces loneliness is not the number of social interactions, but the quality of them. Moments of genuine mutual understanding, being truly seen by another person, the sense that someone knows you and is not going anywhere. These experiences directly calm the brain's threat response in a way that casual contact cannot. Your brain is not counting friends. It is not measuring follower counts or message frequency. It is asking one question over and over that it inherited from your ancestors on the savanna. Is there someone who would come for me if I was gone? When the answer feels uncertain, the alarm sounds. When the answer feels solid, even if it is just one person, even if that certainty comes and goes, something in your nervous system relaxes in a way that no amount of social stimulation can replicate. A deep calm that your ancestors knew when they lay down at night surrounded by people they had known their entire lives. So the next time you feel that sting of exclusion, that hollow pull when the room feels full but distant, that particular ache that has no clean name in any language, know what it is. It is not weakness. It is not irrationality. It is the most ancient part of your brain doing the job it was built to do, scanning for the thing that kept your ancestors alive. Looking for the fire? Looking for the group? Looking for the sign that you are not alone on the savanna? The savanna is gone, but the signal remains, and it is telling you something true.